All right, so now I wanted to demonstrate the use of the keyboard shortcuts section of the preferences. There's a few ways to get there. Command comma on the Mac works. Control comma on the PC also does to get you to the preferences. You might be in another section of this if you've been messing around with other preferences, but you want to go to General, then Keyboard Shortcuts, and that's how you'll get there. They actually put a command in there to get you right to the keyboard shortcuts, and ironically enough, you can assign a keyboard shortcut to that. How meta, right? So just typing keyboard there real quick brings that up. Click on that, click in this box under Enter Key, and then I'm going to throw Control in there because Control is never used in Mac shortcuts, either, well, by default anyway. So I'm going to do Control Option K. I'm holding down all those keys at once, and then I'm going to click Assign. Got to remember to do that, and then hit OK. And now next time I hit this, it'll bring up keyboard shortcuts right away. Now, another good thing to know is that if this is just the last section of the preferences you were looking at, then it will remember that just when you hit your command comma or control comma, a shortcut to bring up the preferences. So it just remembers the last preferences you were looking at. What can we do with this besides making a keyboard shortcut for keyboard shortcuts? Well, there were some things that really needed shortcuts that didn't have them by default. Remember, on first launch, the easiest way to get that marker track open quick and dirty was just click on this gadget. But long term, it'd be nice to have a keyboard shortcut for this. So let's open up our keyboard shortcuts, search for marker track. Oh, there we go. I didn't know what the exact verbiage would be, so I searched for the noun of the thing I was trying to affect. That turns out to be a pretty good strategy. Click on there, click in this box. I'm going to use Control again, because, again, it's hardly ever used for Mac shortcuts. Control M, let's click Assign, and then hit OK. Now when I hit Control M, it will toggle on and off the marker track, which we usually want on for audiobooks. So some other things we can do is if you don't have a numpad and you're stuck in that situation, you can't get your hands on a full keyboard, or you don't have the connections, what have you, then there's a way to get around that. We can start to take some of those juicy, important shortcuts that are on the numpad off of them, like recording. If we search down here, here we go. Usually numpad asterisk. We don't want any of these selected when we go to enter a key. Watch out for that because that will replace it. So if we click under Enter key, and well, a good shortcut for this is the Pro Tools shortcut, Command Space or Control Space for PC. If you come from a Pro Tools background, this would be a comfortable and intuitive shortcut to throw in here. And by not replacing them with our shortcut, then the default shortcuts will still be there for people who might be using your desk who would be familiar with the default shortcuts. Or if you're following a tutorial that uses default shortcuts, then you can use both of them. That's totally an option. All right, so some other things we can do with this is we can borrow shortcuts from your favorite DAW and use them here. So, which is something we basically did right there. So going back to keyboard shortcuts, if we search for example, going to the start of the session, which, this is a little weird. They call that return to zero under transport. So sometimes things are a little tricky. That's normally numpad period, right? If you come from Pro Tools, that shortcut is return on the main keyboard for both Mac and PC. So we could click in here, hit return, hit assign, and that overwrites it, of course. If we want to put that back in there, we can just throw that in there, and that'll keep both of them in there. So that, shows you how you can replace a shortcut with your favorite shortcut from another piece of software. And you could do this for all of your most important shortcuts that you need to work. Now, this brings up a good point, though. What if you've just mangled your shortcuts, through customization to where you can't follow any tutorials anymore, or someone else needs to engineer a session on your desk and they're used to the default shortcuts? What if someone has really gone to town and just made it their own, which is, of course, your prerogative to do so when it's your software. But how do we get around that when another body is at the desk who wants to use the default shortcuts? Well, there's a sort of easy way to do this, which is that you can go up here to help, click on Open Settings Folder, right? Now, if you're on a PC, you can just click the up icon and it will take you up one folder level. The way to do that on the Mac that I like is with the path gadget. If you don't have that, right click here, hit customize toolbar, drag the path gadget over there. There you go. Because what we want to do is we want to go one folder level up. So now we're in the Presonus software folder, which is in the library, basically, right? So these are all the settings, including all those shortcuts and whatnot. So what we're going to do is we're going to close down Studio One. Yep, that's fine. And then we're going to rename this Studio One for Backup, right? And so now when we click on Studio One 4, it'll launch like first launch. In fact, this is pretty much what I did to start the tutorial. Right, it even gives you all of this again. Again, it's going to ask for this. Just install missing, and then it'll skip it, right? Okay, so let me get back to our song here. And so now if we look, hey, that's gone, right? What about our marker track? That's gone as well. So now we can use the program with only the factory settings shortcuts being used and none of them being erased or overwritten. And then what we can do is if we want to set it back to the very customized user settings that it was on before, we can quit out of here, delete this, probably guess what's happening, rename this Studio One 4 again. And then when we boot this up, now if we go up here, look, our shortcuts are back. So you could even, create multiple profiles of settings with this system if you need to. Knowing that you can always, if you just want to reset everything completely, just make sure that there's nothing called Studio One 4 in the Presonus software settings folder. And then when it boots up, it'll launch like it's its first launch. It'll create a folder and rebuild that and start up with factory settings. And if you want to keep settings, just make sure to not delete whatever's there, but rename it something else like backup or whoever's settings they are, if the machine's used by a lot of people. So that's it. That's some keyboard shortcuts and how to default them back to factory settings and bring back very customized user settings that you've backed up. There you go. Hopefully that'll help out a lot with both customizing your experience and getting around some of the pitfalls of customization at the same time.